Rachel had been looking forward to this weekend for months. Work had been absolutely brutal lately, and she desperately needed a break from the constant emails, meetings, and stress. Her family's cabin up in the mountains was the perfect escape. No neighbors for miles, just peace and quiet surrounded by pine trees and fresh air. She'd packed her bags on Thursday night, barely able to contain her excitement. Friday afternoon finally arrived, and she loaded up her old pickup truck with groceries, a few books she'd been meaning to read, and her dog's favorite toys. Max, her golden retriever, was already circling the truck with his tail wagging like crazy. He knew exactly where they were going. The 3-hour drive flew by as she listened to her favorite podcast and watched the city fade away in her rearview mirror. As she turned onto the winding mountain road that led to her property, something felt off. There were cars parked along the narrow road, which was weird because this area was pretty remote. Maybe hikers, she thought, though it seemed like an awful lot of vehicles for a Friday afternoon. She continued up the road, and her confusion quickly turned to alarm. The private road leading to her cabin gate was completely lined with cars on both sides. Sedans, SUVs, even a few luxury vehicles she'd never expect to see out here in the middle of nowhere. Her heart started racing. Had someone broken into her cabin? Was there some kind of emergency? Max sensed her tension and stopped panting, sitting up straight in the passenger seat. Rachel slowed down as she approached her gate, which stood wide open. She always kept it locked. Always. Her grandfather had installed that gate 40 years ago, and her family had been religious about keeping it secured. Now it was just hanging there, inviting anyone and everything onto her private property. Before she could process what was happening, a woman appeared out of nowhere and practically jumped in front of her truck. Rachel slammed on the brakes and Max let out a surprised bark. The woman was wearing expensive-looking workout clothes, the kind you see in magazines, with perfectly styled blonde hair and designer sunglasses perched on her head. She was waving her arms frantically, gesturing for Rachel to roll down her window. Rachel's first instinct was concern. Maybe this woman needed help. Maybe there was an accident. She rolled down her window and was immediately hit with an aggressive, demanding tone that caught her completely off guard. Finally, "Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for weeks," the woman said, not even bothering with a hello or any basic courtesy. She had this clipboard in her hand and was flipping through papers like Rachel was late for some appointment. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Rachel asked, completely confused. "I'm Patricia Reynolds, president of the Pine Valley HOA," the woman announced, like she was revealing she was the mayor or something. "I sent multiple emails and left several voicemails about reserving this venue for today's event." Rachel just stared at her. Venue? Event? What on earth was this woman talking about? "I think there's been some kind of mistake," Rachel said slowly. "This is my family's private cabin. It's not a venue for anything." Patricia let out this exasperated sigh, like Rachel was being difficult on purpose. "Look, I understand you're trying to protect your property, but we have a contract. My daughter's wedding reception is scheduled to start in less than 2 hours, and we have 100 guests arriving any minute now." The words hung in the air for a moment while Rachel tried to make sense of what she was hearing. A wedding reception? 100 guests? On her property? "I never agreed to any contract," Rachel said, her voice rising slightly. "I've never even heard of Pine Valley HOA. This property isn't part of any homeowners association." Patricia's expression shifted from impatient to annoyed. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through it aggressively. "I have all the documentation right here. I sent multiple requests to the email address listed for this property. When I didn't receive a response, I followed standard protocol and proceeded with the reservation. Silence is consent in situations like this." Rachel felt her face getting hot. This woman was actually serious. She genuinely believed she had the right to use someone else's private property because she'd sent a few emails to who knows where. "That's not how any of this works," Rachel said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You can't just decide to use someone's property because they didn't answer an email they never received." Patricia thrust a printed map toward Rachel through the window. It showed the layout of her property with little markers indicating where tables would go, where the catering tent would be set up, even where the portable bathrooms would be placed. Portable bathrooms. On her grandfather's land. Rachel's hand started shaking as she looked at the detailed plans this stranger had made for her family's private retreat. "Listen, I understand this is unexpected," Patricia said, though her tone suggested she didn't really care about Rachel's feelings at all. "But we have a binding agreement. whether you want to acknowledge it or not. The caterers are already on their way. The DJ is setting up his equipment and the bride is getting ready as we speak. You need to give me the keys to the cabin so we can start setting up inside. Rachel couldn't believe what she was hearing. This woman actually expected her to hand over her keys and just leave, so a wedding reception for complete strangers could happen on her property. I'm not giving you any keys, Rachel said firmly. This is private property. My family has owned this land since the 1970s, long before any development or HOA existed up here. Patricia's face started turning red. She leaned closer to Rachel's truck window, and Rachel could see a vein pulsing in her neck. You're being extremely unreasonable right now. Do you have any idea how much money has been spent on this event? How many people are counting on this venue? My daughter's wedding day is going to be ruined because you're being selfish. Max started growling low in his throat, picking up on the hostile energy. Rachel put a calming hand on his head while trying to figure out how this situation had spiraled so far out of control. Your daughter's wedding has nothing to do with me, she said. You made plans without permission. That's not my problem to solve. Patricia pulled out her phone again, this time holding it up like a weapon. I'm calling the police right now. You're interfering with a scheduled event on community property. That's illegal, and I will press charges. Rachel actually laughed, though there was no humor in it. Go ahead and call them. I'd love to have officers here to explain property rights to you. This isn't community property. It's my property and you're trespassing. As if on cue, more cars started arriving. Rachel could see confused-looking people in formal attire getting out of their vehicles, looking around at the lack of any actual venue. A catering truck was trying to navigate the narrow road, its driver looking increasingly frustrated. The whole situation was turning into absolute chaos, and Patricia was still standing there acting like Rachel was the problem. You need to move your truck right now and let us through, Patricia demanded. I'm not asking anymore. I'm telling you. Rachel looked at this entitled woman, then at the growing crowd of wedding guests, then back at her open gate. Something inside her snapped. She'd driven 3 hours to get away from stress, only to find someone trying to steal her weekend and her property. No way was this happening. Actually, Rachel said calmly, I think I'm going to close my gate now. Patricia's eyes went wide when Rachel said she was closing the gate. For a second, the HOA president just stood there with her mouth hanging open like she couldn't believe someone was actually standing up to her. Then her face twisted into something that looked almost scary. You absolutely will not close that gate, Patricia hissed through clenched teeth. I have 100 guests arriving for a wedding reception. This is happening whether you like it or not. Rachel took a deep breath, trying to stay calm even though her heart was pounding. Patricia, I'm going to explain this one more time. This property has been in my family for over 50 years. My grandfather built that cabin with his own hands. We've never been part of any HOA, and we never will be. I don't know where you got the idea that you could use this place, but it was wrong from the start. Patricia started jabbing her finger in the air, her voice getting louder. I sent emails to the address listed on the county records. Multiple emails. I followed proper procedure. What address? Rachel asked. Because I guarantee you didn't contact me or anyone in my family. Patricia fumbled with her phone, scrolling frantically. Right here. propertymanagement247@gmail.com. I sent detailed proposals, floor plans, everything. Rachel almost laughed. That's not my email. I don't even know what that is. Sounds like a scam address or something. My family doesn't use property management. We take care of this place ourselves. The color was draining from Patricia's face, but she wasn't backing down. Instead, she seemed to double down on her anger. That's the address on file with the county. If it's wrong, that's your fault, not mine. I did my due diligence. Your due diligence should have included confirming you actually had permission before planning an entire wedding on someone else's land. Rachel shot back. She could feel her own anger rising now. This woman had just assumed she could take over private property, and now she was trying to blame Rachel for her own mistake. More cars were pulling up now. Rachel could see people in suits and fancy dresses standing around looking confused. A man in a tuxedo walked up to Patricia and asked where the venue entrance was. Patricia's face went even redder as she tried to wave him off. There's been a small delay, Patricia told him, her voice tight. Just wait by your car for a moment. The man looked skeptical but walked away. Patricia immediately turned back to Rachel with renewed fury. Look at what you're doing. These are innocent people who drove hours to be here. Children are in some of those cars. You're going to ruin a young couple's special day because you're being petty. I'm not being petty, Rachel said, her voice steady. I'm protecting my property. You created this mess, not me. You could have actually contacted the real owner. You could have checked property records more carefully. You could have come up here in person weeks ago to confirm. Instead, you just assumed you could do whatever you wanted. Patricia pulled out her phone again, and this time she actually started dialing. Fine, I'm calling the sheriff's department. We'll see who's in the right here. Please do, Rachel said. I'd love to have this on record. While Patricia was on the phone with the sheriff's office, a catering truck finally made it up the road. The driver rolled down his window and shouted, "Where do you want us to unload?" Patricia covered her phone. "Just wait. I'll tell you in a minute." The truck driver looked annoyed but pulled over to the side. Behind him, more vehicles were stacking up. The narrow mountain road was turning into a parking lot, and people were getting out of their cars looking increasingly confused and frustrated. Patricia finished her call and looked at Rachel with a triumphant expression. "A deputy is on his way. He'll straighten this whole thing out." "Good," Rachel said simply. She wasn't worried. She had the deed to this property in the cabin safe. She had tax records. She had everything she needed to prove ownership. A woman in an expensive-looking dress walked up, and Rachel recognized her as the type of person who was used to getting her way. She had the same entitled energy as Patricia. "What's the holdup, Patricia?" People are asking questions. Patricia's expression became pained. "Just a minor misunderstanding with the property owner, Linda. Nothing I can't handle." Linda's eyes narrowed. "Property owner? I thought you said this was a community venue that you had connections to." "It is. I mean, it's complicated," Patricia stammered. "There's just some confusion about the reservation." "Confusion?" Linda's voice rose. "Patricia, I paid you $15,000 to secure this venue. You showed me pictures. You guaranteed me this would be perfect for Victoria's reception." Rachel's eyebrows shot up. $15,000? This woman had actually charged the bride's mother money to use property she didn't own, and had never confirmed she could use. Patricia was sweating now. "Linda, please calm down." "Let me handle this. I'll calm down. There are 80 people here already, with more on the way. The ceremony at the church is in an hour. Where exactly is my daughter supposed to have her reception?" Rachel almost felt bad for Linda. Almost. But she reminded herself that these people had made plans without actually confirming anything. That was on them, not her. "Ma'am," Rachel called out to Linda, "I'm really sorry about your situation, but I need you to understand something. I own this property. I never agreed to host any event. Your friend Patricia never actually contacted me or my family. Whatever arrangement you think you have, it's not legitimate." Linda's face went pale. She turned to Patricia slowly. "You never confirmed with the actual owner?" "I sent emails," Patricia insisted. "Multiple emails. It's not my fault they didn't respond." "To what address?" Linda demanded. Patricia showed her the phone and Linda stared at it. "That's a Gmail address." "Patricia, this is supposedly a historic family property. And you thought they used a generic Gmail address for business? Did you even try to call? Did you come up here in person? Did you check the actual property deed?" Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She had no good answer. "This is unbelievable," Linda said, her voice shaking. "I trusted you. You said you had this under control. You said your HOA connections made you the perfect person to plan this. I am perfect for this. I've planned dozens of community events." Patricia protested. "On community property. This isn't community property." Linda was yelling now, and more people were gathering to see what the commotion was about. Rachel sat in her truck watching this unfold. Part of her felt guilty for the bride and all these guests, but a bigger part of her was furious that someone had been so presumptuous and careless. People didn't just get to use other people's things because they felt like it. A sleek black car pulled up, and a man in an expensive suit got out. He took one look at the chaos and walked straight to Linda. "What's going on? Why is everyone standing around on the road?" "Robert, we have a serious problem," Linda said, her voice cracking. Robert's eyes moved from Linda to Patricia to Rachel's truck blocking the gate. "Someone want to explain?" Linda pointed at Patricia. "She never actually secured the venue. The real owner is right there in that truck, and she says we don't have permission to be here." Robert's face went from confused to angry in about 2 seconds. "What? Patricia, you assured us this was confirmed." We have contracts. Contracts with me, not with the property owner. Patricia snapped. I did everything right. This is her fault for not checking her email. An email you sent to the wrong address. Rachel called out from her truck. An address that nobody in my family has ever used. Robert walked up to Rachel's window. Unlike Patricia and Linda, he seemed to be making an effort to stay calm. Ma'am, I understand this is your property. I'm not disputing that, but we have a genuine crisis here. Is there any way we could work something out? Even just for today? I'm happy to compensate you generously. Rachel appreciated that he was at least being respectful, but she shook her head. I'm sorry, but no. I drove 3 hours to spend a quiet weekend at my family's cabin. I shouldn't have to negotiate for the use of my own property. This should never have gotten this far. Robert nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. This is a disaster. He turned to Patricia and his voice got cold. You told us you'd handled everything. You said this was foolproof. It would have been if she'd just checked her email. Patricia was nearly screaming now. The email you sent to a random Gmail address instead of doing actual research? Robert shot back. How is this anyone's fault but yours? The catering truck driver honked his horn. Hey, are we setting up or what? I got another job at 6. Just wait. Patricia shouted at him. I've been waiting 20 minutes. Time is money, lady. More guests were gathering now and Rachel could hear them talking among themselves. Some were checking their phones, probably looking up directions to other venues. Others were taking pictures of the chaos. One guy was actually recording video on his phone. Patricia noticed the video and lunged toward him. Stop that. Delete that right now. The guy stepped back. It's a public road. I can record whatever I want. This is a private matter. That you're handling in public, the guy said with a shrug, still recording. Rachel's phone buzzed. It was a text from her sister. Hey, are you at the cabin yet? Some weird woman tried to friend me on Facebook asking about renting it for an event. I blocked her. Thought you should know. Rachel's jaw clenched. So Patricia had tried to contact her family through social media too? And when that... Rachel watched the chaos unfolding in front of her gate and made a decision. She'd been patient enough. She'd explained the situation clearly multiple times. Now it was time to actually do something about it. Excuse me. She called out to the growing crowd. I need to move my truck. Patricia's face lit up with hope. Finally. Some common sense. But Rachel wasn't moving away from the gate. She was moving toward it. She put her truck in gear and drove forward, right up to the entrance of her property. Then she grabbed the remote control for the automatic gate from her glove compartment. What are you doing? Patricia's voice had a panicked edge to it now. Rachel didn't answer. She just pressed the button. The gate, which had been standing wide open, started to swing closed with a low mechanical hum. It moved slowly but steadily, the old metal hinges making a satisfying creaking sound. No. Stop, you can't do this! Patricia ran toward the gate, but she wasn't fast enough. The two sides met in the middle with a solid clank, and the automatic lock engaged with a definitive click. Rachel then carefully positioned her truck perpendicular to the gate, creating an additional barrier. Even if someone managed to mess with the gate somehow, they'd have to get through her truck first, and that wasn't happening. Patricia was pounding on Rachel's window now, her face bright red and twisted with rage. Open this gate right now. You're destroying a wedding! A wedding? What kind of person does that? Rachel rolled down her window just a couple of inches. The kind of person who doesn't appreciate strangers trying to steal their property for the day. You did this, Patricia, not me. You made plans without permission. You charged people money for something that wasn't yours to offer. This disaster is entirely your creation. I will sue you for every penny you have, Patricia screamed. Breach of contract. Emotional distress. I'll take everything. There is no contract, Rachel said calmly. You can't breach something that never existed. Now please step away from my truck. Max barked in support and Patricia jumped back. Behind her, the situation was getting worse by the second. More guests were arriving and immediately getting confused. The catering truck driver was shouting into his phone, probably calling his boss. People in formal wear were standing around in the mountain dirt, looking increasingly uncomfortable and angry. Linda, the mother of the bride, was on her phone now too, frantically calling someone. Yes, we need a venue for this afternoon. A wedding reception. 100 people. There was a pause. What do you mean everything's booked? This is an emergency. Robert was standing nearby with his hands on his hips, staring at Patricia with pure fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done? This is our daughter's wedding day. It's supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and instead it's turning into a nightmare." Patricia was breathing hard, her perfect hair falling out of place. "This isn't my fault." She's being completely unreasonable. She pointed at Rachel like a child tattling to a teacher. "You tried to use someone's private property without permission," Robert shouted. "How is that not your fault?" A sheriff's deputy finally arrived, his patrol car navigating carefully through all the vehicles clogging the narrow road. He got out, took one look at the scene, and sighed deeply. Rachel recognized that sigh. It was the universal law enforcement sound of, "I don't get paid enough for this." "All right, someone want to tell me what's going on here?" he asked, pulling out a notepad. Patricia immediately rushed over to him. "Officer!" "Thank goodness you're here. That woman in the truck is preventing us from accessing this venue for a wedding reception. She's holding 100 people hostage." The deputy looked at Rachel in her truck, then at the closed gate, then back at Patricia. "Holding people hostage? Ma'am, that's a serious accusation. She won't let us onto the property. We have a contract, a legal binding contract." "With who?" the deputy asked. Patricia faltered. With me. I arranged this. But who actually owns the property?" "She does," Patricia admitted, pointing at Rachel. "But she never responded to my emails, So you made plans to use property you don't own without getting clear permission from the actual owner?" The deputy's tone made it clear what he thought of that. "I followed proper procedure," Patricia insisted. The deputy looked at his notes. "And what procedure is that exactly?" While Patricia stammered through an explanation that was making her look worse by the second, Rachel rolled down her window further. "Officer, I'm Rachel Winters. I own this property. It's been in my family since 1972. I came up here for a quiet weekend and found all these people trying to use my land without permission. I never received any emails from this woman, never agreed to host any event, and never had any contact with her whatsoever." The deputy walked over to Rachel's truck. "You have proof of ownership, ma'am." "I have the deed in the cabin safe. I can get it for you. I also have tax records, insurance documents, whatever you need." He nodded. "That won't be necessary right now." "I believe you. Ms. Reynolds here already admitted you own the property." He turned back to Patricia. "Ma'am, you can't just use someone's private land because they didn't answer an email. That's not how property rights work. But I had no way of knowing she didn't want us here." Patricia protested. "Did you have any way of knowing she did want you here?" the deputy asked pointedly. Patricia's mouth opened and closed. She had no good answer for that. Linda was crying now, sitting on the hood of her car with her phone pressed to her ear. "Please, there has to be something available, anything. A restaurant? A community center?" She listened for a moment, then let out a sob. "I understand. Thank you anyway." Rachel felt a genuine pang of sympathy for her. Linda hadn't done anything wrong. She'd trusted Patricia to handle things, and Patricia had failed spectacularly. But Rachel couldn't fix this. Opening her gate now would just reward Patricia's behavior and teach her that throwing a big enough tantrum gets results. A white limousine pulled up, somehow squeezing past all the other vehicles. Rachel's stomach dropped. She had a bad feeling about this. The driver got out and opened the back door. A young woman in a full wedding dress stepped out, followed by 2 bridesmaids. The bride looked around at all the chaos, at the people standing around on a dirt road at the closed gate, and her face crumpled. "Mom?" she called out, her voice small and scared. "Mom, what's happening?" "Where's the venue?" Linda rushed over to her daughter, and Robert joined them. The 3 of them huddled together, and Rachel could see Linda trying to explain through her tears. The bride's face went from confused to shocked to devastated in the span of about 30 seconds. Rachel looked away. She couldn't watch this. It was too awful, but she reminded herself firmly that this wasn't her fault. She hadn't caused this. Patricia had. The bride walked over to Patricia, her white dress dragging in the dirt. "You promised my mother this was confirmed. You swore it was perfect. You took our money." Patricia tried to put on a sympathetic expression. "Victoria, sweetheart, I know this is upsetting, but..." "Don't call me sweetheart," Victoria said coldly. "And don't try to explain. I can see what happened. You screwed up and now my wedding reception is ruined. We'll find another place. I promise I'll make this right." "How? Everything's booked. It's a Friday in June. Do you have any idea how hard it was to find any venue at all?" Victoria's voice was rising. This was supposed to be perfect. I've been planning this for a year. More guests were gathering now, phones out, recording everything. The deputy was trying to direct traffic, but it was useless. The road was completely blocked. Someone's car alarm started going off, adding to the chaos. Patricia was falling apart now. Her perfect facade was cracking.
Everyone just calm down.
I'll fix this. I always fix things. You can't fix this, Victoria shouted. My reception is in 3 hours. 3 hours. There's no time to find a new venue, move all the decorations, redirect 100 guests. This is a complete disaster. Rachel sat in her truck watching the scene unfold. Part of her wanted to help, but she knew she couldn't. If she opened that gate now, she'd be validating Patricia's behavior. She'd be teaching Patricia and everyone watching that if you push hard enough, throw a big enough fit, and make enough people cry, you can get whatever you want. That wasn't a lesson she wanted to teach. The deputy came back to her window. Ma'am, I know this is a difficult situation. Is there any possibility? No, Rachel said quietly but firmly. I'm sorry for those people, I really am. But this is my property. I drove 3 hours to get here. I planned this weekend. My plans matter too. I'm not the bad guy here. He nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. I had to ask, but you're well within your rights. Patricia overheard and came charging over. Within her rights? What about human decency? What about compassion? There's a bride in a wedding dress standing in the dirt because of her. Because of you, the deputy corrected. Ms. Winters didn't create this situation, you did. And if you don't calm down and start helping these people find a real solution, I'm going to cite you for creating a public disturbance. Patricia looked like she'd been slapped. You can't be serious, dead serious. Now I suggest you start making calls to find an actual available venue, instead of harassing this woman. Rachel met Patricia's eyes through the truck window. For a brief moment, she saw something other than rage there. Maybe embarrassment. Maybe fear. Maybe the dawning realiza. The next hour was something Rachel would never forget. She sat in her truck, Max curled up beside her, watching a complete meltdown unfold in real time. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. The catering company had finally had enough. Their manager, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, marched up to Patricia with a clipboard and a very done expression on her face. Ms. Reynolds, we need payment before we unload anything. That's company policy for events without a confirmed venue. Patricia waved her hand dismissively. Just set up. We'll sort out the payment details later. No, ma'am. Payment now or we leave. We've already wasted 45 minutes here. This is ridiculous. I have a contract with you. The catering manager flipped through her papers. Your contract specifically states that payment is due upon arrival at the venue. This isn't a venue. This is a blocked private road. So either you pay us now, or we're leaving to make our 6 o'clock booking across town. Patricia's face went through about 5 different shades of red. Fine, how much? $4,200. What? The estimate was $3,500. That was the estimate for setup at a confirmed venue with facilities. This situation requires additional labor and time, which puts you into our emergency service category. Plus there's a 20% inconvenience fee. Patricia looked like she might explode. That's highway robbery. The manager shrugged. That's the contract you signed. Would you like to review Section 12, Paragraph 4? It's very clear about additional fees for non-standard situations. She paused. And I'd argue that trying to set up a reception on a blocked road qualifies as non-standard. Patricia fumbled for her purse, hands shaking. Rachel could see her counting credit cards, probably running through her options. The whole thing was getting more pathetic by the minute. Meanwhile, guests were getting increasingly restless. A group of older people had pulled out lawn chairs from their cars and were sitting on the side of the road like they were at a tailgate party. Someone had actually opened a cooler and was passing around beers. A couple of teenagers were taking selfies in front of the disaster, probably posting it all over social media. Rachel's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Is this the cabin on Mountain Ridge Road? I'm at what's supposed to be a wedding reception, but it's just chaos. Are you the owner? She stared at the message. Someone at this wedding had somehow tracked down her number. She decided not to respond. More texts started coming in. Different numbers, all asking variations of the same thing. Word was spreading through the guest list about who was blocking the wedding. Rachel's chest tightened. This was exactly the kind of thing that could turn into an online mob situation. The deputy noticed people taking pictures of Rachel's truck and stepped in. "All right, folks, I need everyone to stop recording and photographing the property owner. That's harassment, and I will start writing citations." A middle-aged man in a suit lowered his phone reluctantly. "We just want people to know what happened here. What happened here is someone made plans without permission and it backfired," the deputy said firmly. "The property owner is completely within her rights. If you have a problem with the situation, take it up with Ms. Reynolds." All eyes turned to Patricia, who was still arguing with the catering manager. She looked up and seemed to realize everyone was staring at her. Why is everyone looking at me?" "This isn't my fault." "You charged my family $15,000 to secure a venue you didn't actually have permission to use," Linda said, her voice eerily calm now. The crying had stopped, replaced by something much colder. "How exactly is this not your fault?" "I did everything by the book. I sent emails. I documented everything." Robert stepped forward and his lawyer voice came out. Rachel could tell this was a man who was used to winning arguments. "Patricia, let me explain something to you in terms you might understand. You committed fraud. You took money under false pretenses. You promised a service you couldn't deliver. In some jurisdictions, that's a criminal offense." Patricia went pale. "I didn't commit fraud." "That's insane. I made a good faith effort to secure this venue." "A good faith effort would have included confirming you actually had permission," Robert said coldly. "A good faith effort would have included visiting the property in person. A good faith effort would have included actual due diligence beyond sending emails to a suspicious Gmail address." He pulled out his own phone. "I'm a contracts attorney, Patricia, and I'm going to make sure you understand exactly how badly you've exposed yourself legally. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you of reality. You took our money. You made promises you couldn't keep. And now my daughter is standing on a dirt road in her wedding dress while 100 guests watch her special day fall apart. Yes, we will be pursuing legal action. Count on it." Patricia looked around desperately like she was searching for someone to back her up. But all the guests were either ignoring her, glaring at her, or recording her. She'd become the villain of her own story. An expensive-looking SUV pulled up and a man in his 60s got out. He was wearing golf clothes and had the general demeanor of someone who was very important and wanted everyone to know it. He took one look at the chaos and his face darkened. "Patricia, what in God's name is going on here?" Patricia's expression shifted to something almost like relief. "Howard, thank goodness!" "This woman won't let us access the venue, and everyone's being completely unreasonable about it." Howard, who Rachel assumed was Patricia's husband based on the way he closed his eyes in frustration, walked up to the closed gate. He looked at Rachel's truck, at the locked gate, at the crowd of angry wedding guests, and back at his wife. "Please tell me you didn't do what I think you did," he said quietly. "I don't know what you mean," Patricia said defensively. "The cabin. Patricia, did you actually confirm with the owner that we could use this property? Or did you just assume again?" The word "again" hung in the air like a bomb. Patricia's face went through several expressions before settling on defiant. "I followed all the proper procedures. I'm the HOA president. I know what I'm doing." "You're the president of Pine Valley HOA, which doesn't have any jurisdiction over private property outside the development," Howard said, his voice getting louder. "I specifically asked you 3 weeks ago if you'd confirm this venue with the actual owner. You said yes. Did you lie to me, Patricia?" The crowd was dead silent now. Even Max had stopped panting like he knew something big was happening. Patricia's voice got small. "I sent emails. Lots of emails." "That counts as confirmation. Emails to what address?" She showed him her phone. Howard looked at it, then looked at his wife like he'd never seen her before. "propertymanagement247gmail.com. Patricia, does this look like a legitimate property management company to you? Did you even try to verify this email? Did you call anyone? Did you check the property deed at the county office?" "I didn't think I needed to. The address was on file. Where? Where was this address on file?" Patricia fumbled with her phone. "I found it somewhere. I don't remember exactly." "You don't remember?" Howard's voice was flat. "You staked our reputation, charged someone $15,000, and planned an entire wedding reception based on an email address you found somewhere and can't verify. Stop acting like I'm the bad guy here. That woman in the truck is the one ruining everything. Patricia pointed at Rachel accusingly. Howard walked up to Rachel's truck window. She tensed, not sure what to expect, but his expression was apologetic. Ma'am, I am so incredibly sorry about this. I'm Patricia's husband. I had no idea she hadn't actually confirmed this with you. If I'd known, I would have stopped this train wreck weeks ago. Rachel relaxed a little. Thank you for saying that. I know this doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know that not everyone here thinks you're the problem. My wife made a terrible mistake, and you're paying the price for it just as much as these wedding guests are. He paused. Is there anything at all that might make you reconsider? Even just letting them take some photos on the property? I'll pay whatever you think is fair. Rachel appreciated that he was being respectful, but she shook her head. I'm sorry, but no. I understand this is awful for everyone, but I shouldn't have to negotiate for the use of my own property. Your wife created this situation. I didn't. Howard nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. This is completely unacceptable. He turned back to Patricia and his voice went cold. Patricia, you are going to refund every penny these people paid you today, right now. I can't. I already spent it on deposits and planning fees. Then you're going to figure out how to get it back because these people are not paying for your incompetence. He looked at Linda and Robert. I will personally ensure you receive a full refund by Monday morning, plus an additional $10,000 for your trouble, and to help relocate the reception. You have my word? Victoria, the bride, finally spoke up. Her voice was quiet but steady. I don't want your money. I want my wedding reception. Can money fix that? Howard had no answer for that. Nobody did. The deputy's radio crackled and he stepped away to respond. When he came back, he addressed the crowd. All right, folks, we've got a traffic situation developing. This road needs to be cleared so emergency vehicles can get through if needed. I need everyone to start heading back to your cars and find her. The next 2 hours felt like watching dominoes fall. Once the deputy ordered everyone to clear out, the whole situation unraveled even faster. The catering company loaded back up without ever unloading a single plate. Patricia tried to argue with them, but they drove away mid-sentence. That probably felt appropriate given everything else. Guests started leaving in clusters, some angry, some just confused and disappointed. Rachel watched a grandmother in a purple dress comfort 2 crying flower girls as their parents loaded them into a minivan. A group of groomsmen in matching ties stood around looking lost before finally getting into their cars. Each departure felt like another nail in the coffin of what was supposed to be a perfect day. Victoria, the bride, sat on the bumper of the limousine with her head in her hands. Her expensive dress was getting dirty, but she didn't seem to care anymore. One of her bridesmaids sat next to her, arm around her shoulders, not saying anything. Sometimes there just aren't words. Linda was on her phone, and from the snippets Rachel could hear, she'd finally found a hotel willing to throw together an emergency reception. Yes, whatever you have available. I don't care about the room configuration. Just something with tables and chairs for about 70 people. A pause. No, not 100 anymore. We've lost at least 30 who are just giving up and going home. Robert was taking notes on his phone, probably documenting everything for the lawsuit that was definitely coming. Every few seconds he'd look up at Patricia with an expression that could freeze water. Howard had pulled Patricia aside, and they were having a heated conversation near their SUV. Rachel couldn't hear the words, but the body language told the whole story. Patricia kept gesturing wildly, trying to explain while Howard stood perfectly still with his arms crossed. At one point, Patricia actually stamped her foot like a child having a tantrum. Howard's expression didn't change at all. The deputy came back to Rachel's window one more time. Ma'am, I know today wasn't what you had in mind for your weekend. Rachel let out a tired laugh. That's putting it mildly. For what it's worth, you handled this exactly right. Firmly but not aggressively. I've seen property disputes get a lot uglier than this. It still feels awful watching that bride, Rachel admitted. That's the worst part. She didn't do anything wrong. No, she didn't, but neither did you. Ms. Reynolds created this mess all by herself. He tipped his hat. You have a good weekend now, or what's left of it anyway. As he walked away, Howard approached Rachel's window again. Patricia was noticeably absent, sitting in their SUV with her head down. Ma'am, I need you to know something, Howard said. This isn't the first time Patricia has overstepped her bounds. Last year, she tried to fine a neighbor for a mailbox she didn't like. even though his property isn't in our HOA. Before that, she threatened to sue the county over a zoning decision that had nothing to do with our community. She's gotten it into her head that being HOA president gives her some kind of unlimited authority. Rachel didn't know what to say to that. I've been making excuses for her behavior for too long, Howard continued.
Telling myself she means well, that she's just trying to be helpful.
But this? He gestured at the remaining chaos. This is inexcusable. I'm going to make sure she faces real consequences this time. Not just from me, but from the HOA board and these families she hurt. I appreciate you telling me that, Rachel said carefully. Howard pulled out a business card. This has my personal cell number on it. If Patricia tries to contact you, bother you, or cause any more problems, please call me immediately. I'll handle it, he paused. And I truly am sorry you got dragged into this. You deserve to enjoy your property in peace. After he left, the road finally started to clear. The last few cars pulled away, leaving behind tire tracks in the dirt and a few pieces of trash that had been dropped in the confusion. Rachel sat in her truck for another few minutes, making sure everyone was really gone, before finally opening her gate and driving through. The cabin looked exactly as she'd left it 3 weeks ago. Peaceful, quiet, surrounded by pine trees. Max jumped out of the truck and immediately started exploring, tail wagging. Everything was normal here. It was like the chaos outside the gate existed in a different universe. Rachel unlocked the cabin and started unloading her truck. As she worked, her phone kept buzzing with notifications. She finally looked at it and her stomach sank. Someone had posted about the incident on social media, and it was spreading fast. The first post she found was actually supportive. Local woman stands up to entitled HOA president who tried to steal her property for a wedding. Good for her. Property rights matter. But others were less kind. Woman ruins bride's wedding over a technicality. Have some compassion. The comments were a mess of people arguing about who was right. Rachel closed the app. She didn't need to read anymore. Over the next few days, the story took on a life of its own. Someone had recorded video of Patricia screaming at Rachel's truck and it went viral. Not the kind of viral where you get famous and everything's great, but the kind where strangers on the internet dissect every detail of your life and argue about whether you're a hero or a villain. Rachel's sister called her that evening. Have you seen the videos going around? Some of them, Rachel admitted, sitting on the cabin's porch with a glass of wine. Max was sprawled at her feet, finally relaxed. People are calling you the Gate Karen, her sister said, but they're also calling Patricia worse things. It's a whole thing. I just wanted a quiet weekend, Rachel said tiredly. How did this turn into an internet drama? Because it's the perfect storm of wedding drama, property rights, and entitled people getting their comeuppance. The internet lives for this stuff. Her sister paused. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. That woman had no business planning an event on your property. Rachel appreciated hearing that, even if she still felt guilty about the bride. By Monday, the story had reached local news. A reporter actually tracked down Rachel's number and called asking for an interview. She politely declined. Patricia apparently did not decline and gave a tearful interview about how she'd made an innocent mistake and was being crucified by internet bullies. The interview did not go well for Patricia. The comments section immediately filled with people pointing out that her innocent mistake involved taking $15,000 from a family and failing to do basic due diligence. Several people posted screenshots showing that Patricia had a history of similar behavior in her HOA, including trying to fine people for violations they hadn't committed. Rachel stayed at the cabin through the weekend, trying to enjoy her time despite everything. She hiked with Max, read her books, and tried not to check social media. It was mostly successful. When she got back to the city on Sunday evening, there was a letter in her mailbox. It was from Howard, Patricia's husband. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a handwritten note. Rachel, please accept this as compensation for the stress and violation of your peace. Patricia has been removed from her position as HOA president effective immediately. The board held an emergency meeting after multiple residents came forward with complaints about her behavior. She is also facing a lawsuit from the wedding family, which she deserves. I've filed for divorce. Some things cannot be overlooked or forgiven, and this incident made me realize I've been enabling destructive behavior for far too long. I hope you can enjoy your property without any further interruptions. Sincerely, Howard. Rachel stared at the check and the letter for a long time. She hadn't expected this, any of it. She decided she'd donate the money to a local charity. Taking it felt wrong somehow, even though Howard meant well. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived. This one was from Victoria, the bride. Dear Rachel, I want you to know that I don't blame you for what happened on my wedding day. I was angry at first, I won't lie. But as I've had time to process everything, I realize that Patricia Reynolds is the only person responsible for that disaster. You were protecting your property, which you had every right to do. I'm sorry you got caught up in our mess. The reception we ended up having at the hotel wasn't what we planned, but it was still special. My husband and I are married, we're happy, and that's what matters. I hope you can enjoy your family's cabin in peace. Thank you for not backing down even when it was hard. You taught me something important about standing up for yourself. Best wishes, Victoria. Rachel put that letter on her refrigerator. It helped more than Victoria probably knew. The story eventually died down online, replaced by newer dramas and controversies. But it lived on in local legend. Rachel heard through her sister that Patricia's HOA had completely reformed their leadership, structure, and implemented new rules about what the president could and couldn't do without board approval. The next time Rachel went to the cabin, she installed security cameras at the gate and along the driveway. She also changed the locks and added a new sign. Private property. No trespassing. No exceptions. Yes, that means you. Her sister laughed when she saw it. Subtle. I'm done being subtle, Rachel said. This is my family's land. Nobody gets to just decide they can use it. She never heard from Patricia again. According to Howard, who sent one final email a month later, Patricia had moved to another state to start fresh. The lawsuit from Victoria